Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Eva and I'm a millennial who's absolutely obsessed with makeup. In today's video, we are going to be talking all about the brand new Urban Decay Moondust Space Cowboy eyeshadow quad. If you're interested in seeing me try all four of these new shades on my eyelids, and if you're interested in seeing comparisons to all of the other Moondust shadows in my collection, then go ahead and keep on watching. And if you're not already subscribed, would love for you to subscribe and also to follow me on Instagram. It does really help out my channel. Let's talk a little bit more about the launch. This launched last week on Sephora.com. At this point in time, it is a Sephora.com exclusive. It retails for $39 and it contains 4 shades that are the Urban Decay Moondust formula, which is a super sparkly, glittery, shimmery shadow. So if you do not like sparkly eyeshadows, you will not like this palette. But if you are someone like me and is just never going to age out of sparkly, glittery eyelids, then I think you might like this one. My understanding is this is one of the kind of like early Urban Decay holiday launches. Last week on the Sephora app exclusively, a bunch of holiday palettes did launch early. I have seen in promo images that Urban Decay is also launching another palette for the holidays that looks amazing. It is shaped like a star, which yes, is pretty gimmicky. And it looks like it also has some Moondust shades and then perhaps maybe some matte shades. If I'm able to find the image and it's not copyrighted, I will put it on the screen. But I do wonder if that one is going to be like an Ulta exclusive. When they did launch the Moondust palettes, these guys here, there were some, if I recall, like I feel like one was Sephora, one was Ulta. So when the star one comes out, I will definitely be picking it up to compare. Now I want to quickly touch on the claims of this palette. So I do have the Sephora app pulled up in front of me. A palette inspired by the viral Moondust shade Space Cowboy, featuring 4 high-impact shades packed with microfine glitter that leave a shimmery finish. The signature microfine shimmer formula you know and love from Urban Decay's Moondust eyeshadow collection, now available in a limited edition glitter eyeshadow palette. Inspired by the ultraviolet shade Space Cowboy, the Moondust quad comes with 4 beginner-friendly, silky, shimmering, light-catching shades. It goes on and on, but essentially it is a palette that is inspired by the Space Cowboy shade. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I do love this formula. There can be some fallout, but for me, the fallout is pretty minimal, and I feel like the payoff and the easy nature of this one and done type of formula really outweighs the fallout that I occasionally get with these. So going in, I'm already biased because I know I like the formula. So as long as the formula holds up, I'm very hopeful for this palette. I'm going to do some live swatches for you now, and then we will try all of these on our eyelids. Let's go over the shades. So this shade here we have is Space Cowboy Rides Again, which is described as a light peach shimmer with silver glitter. And then here we have A-List Energy, which is a peachy pink shimmer with magenta glitter. Then we move into Sparkle Hour, which is a pink shimmer with silver glitter. And then last but not least, we have Lunar Lit, which is a warm brown with silver glitter. Let's get these swatched on my arm. Okay, so first going into Space Cowboy Rides Again. Ooh, that has beautiful, beautiful shimmer. Here we have Space Cowboy Rides Again. And obviously we will be comparing it to the OG Space Cowboy in a little bit. Next, we're gonna do A-List Energy. These just glide right on the arm. This is a very, very smooth shimmer glitter formula, which you don't always get in a glitter shadow. Sometimes they're super chunky. These are not chunky. Okay, let's do Sparkle Hour. And then last but not least, we have Lunar Lit. Here we have them all lined up. I mean, these are just so beautiful. The formula feels consistent to the previous formulas, which is great. They have kind of still that same amount of micro glitter that we've seen in the previous palettes and in the previous shades. Some of them have more of a pigmented base than others, but overall, really consistent from the swatches. But what matters is how they wear on the eyes. So I do have my makeup done, except for my eyes, of course. I am not going to prime my lids because I am going to be swatching 4 different shades and removing them. So obviously, when you wear these, you will want to use a primer, probably a glitter primer like the NYX one would be my recommendation. Let's first go in with Space Cowboy Rides Again. We will get that one on the eyes. Very pretty. So Space Cowboy Rides Again is the one with that sheer base. So it's definitely going to be a very subtle shimmery shade, or one that you probably would want to use as a topper over maybe a matte shadow. So do keep that in mind. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit closer. So this is the shade Space Cowboy Rides Again. This shade again has that clear base, so it's really just that shimmery topper. I really like to wear it as alone as like a one and done shade because I do think it's very subtle, definitely work appropriate, and nice when you want something just like a little bit fun but nothing too out there. Now we're going to go into A-List Energy. So here we have A-List Energy. Before we swatch the other 2 shades, I want to show you how little fallout those shadows actually have with no primer. So typically when I apply a shimmery, glittery shadow, especially one without primer, and then I remove it with a makeup wipe, typically I'll see glitter all over my face. We're barely seeing it. Granted, I only had those on for a couple of minutes, but as someone who loves this formula, I can attest that the fallout for these are very, very minimal. Going into our next 2 shades, or our final 2 shades, we are going to do Lunar Lit. This one looks like it's going to have more of a pigmented base, but we will see on the lids. Oh, yep, this one definitely has more of a pigmented base. Holy moly, this is gorgeous. Wow, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful shade. So the first 2 in the palette are ones with sheer bases. So both of these 2 shades are ones that are going to be toppers, or like truly barely there shades. This one, that has a lot of pigment in the base and is more of, I would say, like a full-blown eyeshadow as opposed to an eye topper. Last, we are going into this beautiful brown shade, which is called Sparkle Hour. And this one both in the pan and then in the swatches looks like it's going to be the least sparkly one, but one with like the strongest base. I need to figure out how other YouTubers are able to like apply makeup while still looking at the camera. That is honestly the hardest part about doing YouTube, is eye camera contact while also trying to apply makeup. I need to figure out their secrets. Okay, so this one is what I guess. It is the least sparkly, but the strongest base pigment. So this one is another one that I would call a standalone eyeshadow as opposed to a topper. So here we have that last shade right here. I'm gonna go ahead and remove these and actually apply like one shade on both lids so I'm not driving myself crazy with 2 different colors. I am so in love with this shade right here, this one, which is Lunar Lit. Okay, I went back and I actually applied the NYX glitter primer. This stuff is great, and I have to say what a difference it actually made in making this shade pop on my lids. It really helps it stand out when you do apply an eyeshadow base. So highly recommend doing that. So far, I mean, the formula is exactly like the traditional Moondust formula. I love that in this palette you have 2 toppers and then 2 like true eyeshadows. I think it gives you a nice amount of variety. Some of these you can layer, some of these you can have be a one and done, similar to what I have right now on my lids. And yeah, overall, very, very pleased with this palette. Also, like the size of these pans, I'm pretty sure are like the same size that you would get in a single shadow, if not like close enough. So I do think $10 per shadow is a very reasonable deal, especially coming off of my Hermes eyeshadow quad review. I do want to move into arm swatches and comparisons though. So you will see up on the screen here, I do have these swatched on my arm up close so you can really see the difference between the more sheer formula and then the ones with the more pigmented base. Time for comparisons. So I own the 2 Moondust palettes that came out, I think earlier this year perhaps. So this one is Galactic Cowgirl and this one is Space Rider. I'm going to show you what these look like kind of lined up. I'm hoping I don't drop one of these, so pray for me. Okay. The glare is pretty bad from the ring light, but this should be giving you an idea of the color stories. I want to go through and do comparisons to see if any of the shades in these palettes are super close or overlapping to what we have in the new palette. Right off the bat, I do want to compare some of the pinky-ish shades from all of the palettes. So let's start off. I'm going to grab Lunar Lit and swatch that right here. And then let's go ahead and just swatch it right next to Space Cowboy Rides Again. Oh, I'm sorry, this is A-List Energy. This is not Space Cowboy Rides Again. I was like, wait, what? And in the Moondust Galactic Cowgirl palette, I want to grab this one here, which is Cowgirl Warrior. And in the Space Rider palette, I'm going to swatch Wild Dipper Rides Again. So here we have those pinky shades all lined up. I'm gonna be honest with you, like there's enough, you might be looking at this being like, these all look the same. To an eyeshadow collector, I actually think these all look different enough to justify owning them. Like, I don't think there's a huge overlap. I would say the biggest overlap is probably between A-List Energy and then this one here, which is Big Dipper Rides Again. The biggest difference is A-List Energy has a pink micro glitter and Big Dipper Rides Again has silver micro glitter. They are definitely similar, but for me, I'm like, these are different enough. Now I want to compare the brown or like bronzy shades in the palettes, grabbing Sparkle Hour here. In Galactic Cowgirl, I'm going to grab this one here, which is called Cowgirl Rider. Now this one is going to be very different. It's much, much bronzier, but let's swatch it. And in the Space Rider palette, I want to grab the Cosmic Space Dust shade. Absolutely beautiful. So we have Lunar Lit, and then we have Cowgirl Rider, and Cosmic Space Dust. These are all very different. Like if we're comparing the similarity of the browns versus the similarity of the pinks were definitely very similar. These are, in my opinion, like totally different shades of brown, copper, bronze. Now let's compare kind of like the champagne-y shades in the different palettes. starting off with Space Cowboy Rides Again. Now I can't find my single shadow of Space Cowboy. I own it. It's just somewhere in this mess. But the Space Rider palette contains it as well. So we are going to compare Space Cowboy. Up close, like when I'm looking at them, they look quite similar, but in the viewfinder of the camera, I think they look quite different. And it is because of the base. Like the base of Space Cowboy Rides Again is a little bit like pinkier than Space Cowboy. I also want to compare the like lightest shades to Space Cowboy Rides Again. So we have Space Cowboy Rides Again. I'm gonna swatch this guy right here, and this was Star Cowgirl. And then I'm gonna go into Cosmic Cowgirl from the Galactic Cowgirl palette. Swatch that here. I am going to also go in to Cosmic, one of my single shades that I own. And here we have the Champagne shades lined up. I did also do arm swatches of all three of the palettes lined up on my arm, so I will go ahead and insert that here so you can see them one after the other. For my final thoughts, I am in love with this palette. I think this palette is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. The formulas were great. I think there was definitely enough variety in this palette. Again, I love that there were kind of those two different formulas. And then for me, there wasn't like a ton of overlap between the other palettes that exist in the Moondust lineup. I mean, sure, those pinky ones were similar. The Space Cowboy Rides Again was similar to Space Cowboy, but as someone who's just such a fan of this formula, I think I give you permission. I give you permission if you own the other ones to also pick this one up because they were different enough in my opinion. I am really excited for Urban Decay to launch that other kind of gimmicky star palette that looks like it's going to have more Moondust shades because I cannot get enough of this formula. It's just so beautiful. They're so wearable, such minimal fallout, and it's just a really fun way to wear glitter in a more like everyday appropriate setting. Like I think this is a totally appropriate eye look to wear to the office. It's not too crazy, it's not too out there, but it is a little bit more fun than what you maybe will do on an everyday basis. If this video was helpful, would love for you to subscribe, follow me on Instagram. Also, if you decide to pick this up, would love if you consider using my affiliate link, which I will have linked down below, and I will also have everything I'm wearing on my face linked down below as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you watching my next video.